How you doing today, folks? And welcome to the single action showdown. Microtech Heretic. Which one is better? Honestly, I have no idea. But let's find out. Now, first off, we have edge, geometry, stability, as well as just the general cool factor of what we have on offer. Now, both companies' flagship single action models are here. Here we have the Microtech Knives Hydra, and we have the Microtech Halo 6, which is the most current iteration of the Halo series. Now, for different blade shapes of the Microtech, we have single edge, double edge, we have Tonto, drop point, and we also have the Hellhound. And for this video, we're going to be discussing the Hellhound finish because it's the most similar cosmetically to this, which this is the only blade shape that is offered on the Microtech Hydra. They do have a drop point variant, but they all have this little kind of jimping on it, which as you can tell is pretty close, or at the very least inspired by the Hellhound from Microtech. So as far as the overall cool factor, which admittedly is a very biased category, personally I really have to give it to the Hellhound. The crazy grinds, the little bits of jimping here, which are cut into the actual blade, which also blends very nicely to this actual locking notch. The little holes here, the slight fuller, everything is very busy, but it's very, very cool. It's not the most opportune to cut with. It does get jammed up quite a bit, and you definitely have problems. The Hellhound jimping is also fantastic if you want to actually choke up on this knife. So for me personally, it's going to have to be the Hellhound. But unfortunately, that's where it ends for Microtech, because this blade is much more functional, it's much slicier, it's thinner behind the edge, and it's overall a better performer than the Hellhound. Again, the Hellhound, in my opinion, looks cooler. I actually like the blade much more than I do this one. But as far as actual use, the Microtech Knives Hydra is ground phenomenally. The tip is chamfered just a little bit. So as you can see on the actual Hellhound, you just have one big thick blade stock in general. On this, because it does have a thinner tip, it's still reinforced because of the way it's grinded, but it punctures much more easy. The jimping on the Hydra is also a bit more superior. Again, the Microtech has solid jimping with the Hellhound, but this just fits a little bit better in hand overall. And while the Microtech is definitely a functional piece, you can tell that the Hydra was designed to work, and as such, it really does work fantastically. But that's only the blade shape, folks, and we got a lot more to go. Aesthetics. Now, as far as the overall look of the knife, which is again is a very biased category, we're going to go ahead and go over each individual piece by itself, talk about the pros, the cons, as well as the fundamental flaws of each piece, because they both have two killer design flaws. Now, the Hydra is a very stylized piece. In my video, I referred to it as the caveman prison shank. And it definitely does have some very interesting jimping onto it, a whole bunch of different little texture pieces. This little piece right here is designed to almost look like a stone, and it very much does. On the reverse side, you have the same generalized jimping throughout, the same kind of contoured feeling in the actual hand, as well as the Hydra pocket clip, which the Hydra pocket clip is something that I tend to I tend to bemoan a lot. Now, all Microtech knives, for the most part, especially the earlier models, have these pocket clips. But on the Hydra, it happens to be particularly egregious. It really interrupts the overall flow of the design. In my personal opinion, again, aesthetics are very much about personal preference. For me personally, it doesn't kill it, but it definitely does knock it quite a bit off its pedestal. We also have the actual charging handle right here, which just feels kind of cheap. Also, the anodization right here is not particularly well done. This began to rub off within the first day and a half, and that's not a good thing at all. And it negatively impacts the overall aesthetics piece very much. Also, this button, the way it slides, will constantly rub against the actual scales themselves. It's not properly chamfered out. It should be raised a little bit higher off. As it currently sits, it's very much functional, but again, as far as just the aesthetic piece of the knife, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, because you do definitely get this weird white line on your aluminum very quickly. Now, as far as the Microtech, as you can see, I got the standard black aluminum, but I got a signature series, which has this beautiful dagger on it, and the bronze hardware, and charging handle, and everything else. This, to me, as far as looks, is an absolute home run. I cannot think of a way to improve it, except for, of course, if the overall design flowed onto the back. The back side of this knife, which again is not the presentation scale, it's the back side for a reason, is very, very plain. We also have this weird little bumped notch poking out. that I have to assume is part of the mechanism, but again, you could design that better. There's other single action knives that don't have that, and that's not really a coincidence. The only actual piece you have, which is close to the actual presentation scale, is this little piece at the bottom here, which is a little bit of bronze hardware. But overall, it makes the knife look very disjointed. As far as the actual charge and handle goes, however, it looks much cleaner. It is designed much better, at least as far as pure aesthetics. And if you are interested, the backside of the charge and handle is also pretty stylish as well. So for me, as far as the aesthetic piece of it, it's definitely going to have to be given to the Microtech. Now, the Microtech, if you don't like the way I have mine set up, you can set yours up pretty much any way you want to. They have tons of colors, fit, finishes, screws, blade shapes, any number of things. And there definitely is quite a bit for the Hydra as well, but there's just more for the Microtech. And personally, I appreciate this kind of classic design a bit more than the actual Hydra. Not by much, but this one just barely edged it out. Action and disengagement. Now, the action on the Hydra is achieved very simply. This is the safety mechanism. You slide it back, you expose a button, you press that button, and the knife deploys. It's very, very seamless. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, it's effortless, and you really understand why it was designed this way. Now, the action on the Hydra is achieved very simply. This is the safety mechanism. You slide it back, you expose a button, you press that button, and the knife deploys. It's very, very seamless. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but once you do, it's effortless, and you really understand why it was designed this way. Now, as far as the Halo 6, it also has a safety mechanism. You draw this button down just a little bit, and then you press. It's not quite as clean as the actual Hydra. There is an option to have this without safety, but then it requires a great deal more force to actuate the actual button, which to me just doesn't feel quite as good. But that is, again, my personal opinion. As far as the overall strength of the spring, there's no doubt that the Halo 6 fires much harder. However, because the Hydra is a much more compact knife, you can feel it much more in your actual hand. Now, the Halo 6 is much louder. Again, it is much stronger, but the Hydra feels, in my personal opinion, just a little bit better to fire. I like the way it genuinely shakes your hand every single time you press that button. Like, there is no other knife, in my opinion, really like that. The Halo 6 is close, but it's a close second. With all that being said, these knives aren't just about the actual spring tension or the force of the spring shooting that blade out of the handle, because the method of deployment is just as important as the deployment itself. Now, for the Hydra, again, you have this weird little stone-shaped kind of apostrophe. There will be about maybe a 5 to 10 second learning period when you first get this knife in hand, but once you actually figure it out, it's very, very simple. Now, with the Halo 6, and again, this is with the safety model, you have to press this little switch down, and then you fire. And it's by no means seamless, but you can definitely get the hang of it pretty quickly. Also, if you want, again, the version without the safety on, it requires a great deal more force to press this button, and it also, in my opinion, really impacts and damages the overall action. So as far as overall method of deployment as well as the action itself, I'm going to have to give it to the Hydra. Again, this feels a little bit smoother in hand. It's a little better to deploy. Also because of the more compact nature of the knife, when that spring hits, you really feel it and you get that beautiful jarring sensation that only a single action OTF really ever offers you. Retraction or disengagement. Now, both of these knives do essentially retract in the same way, though the method in which they retract is just a little bit different, and those differences really do matter. As far as the Hydra, you press the button, you pull the charging handle, you let go of the button, it's very important, you pull it all the way back, and you lock it in. Very important to let go of the button, because if you do not, this will pop back out again. And that is very much a dangerous thing. I have personally not experienced this issue firsthand by myself, but I had a friend of mine that was having a very hard time, being able to pull this knife back in. And so they were holding it basically by right here. And so when they did not fully let that thing in, it jarred back out again, their finger moved up, and this just slit very deep into their index finger. Now, being aware of that, it probably won't happen to you, but again, it's something that is a little bit of a nitpick for me personally. It's something that I kind of have to knock off the actual knife. Another thing about this knife, which is both a pro and a con, is this lanyard. Now, if you do deploy the knife and you want to retract it, you have this whole big lanyard you can hold to pull it. It makes being able to disengage it very, very easy. If you don't want the lanyard, again, you can use this little piece, but this is less than ideal. Also, to those who use lanyards, they tend to be a great way to pull the knife out of your pocket, right? If you try this with this knife, this is what happens. Even though the blade is fully within the actual handle, this opens up like it's nothing. And I've found myself so many times reaching to grab this knife out and nothing comes out besides the actual handle. It's a design flaw, it's an issue. Personally, it didn't bother me that much in my review, but the more I've held this knife and used this knife, the more it started to irritate the crap out of me. Now, as far as the Microtech, you press this button in, you do not have to bother with the safety, which makes it very easy to actuate. You disengage the locks, which are again right here. This is locked into the handle at any point in time. You can't pull it out without pressing these two little locks. And then it slides out, and it slides back in. Overall, it's a much better design in my personal opinion. I do like the option of having the lanyard there, but it's not really ideal. Also, it does the same thing as the Hydra, but it doesn't rock it out. You know, it goes pretty slow. And the way this overall knife is designed, it's not too big of an issue because it requires such force to press that button down that I don't see yourself basically doing this to try to actuate it. And if you do, it's not really particularly smart. Details really matter on these knives. So even though Microtech might seem like it had it in the bag, once you hear this, you hear how loose this charging handle is, how cheap it feels. I really cannot recommend that charging handle. It's a really bad piece. It is kind of the Achilles heel of this knife in my personal opinion. While the Hydra definitely does move, it does not move anywhere near as much, and it overall feels much more stable and much more premium, which is strange because this is a much cheaper knife. So overall, again, the Hydra kind of just narrowly edges out the Microtech. Those little fit and finish flaws, they really make a big difference when you're dealing with a knife of this price point. So it's definitely something that Microtech needs to work on. If it didn't have that issue where it just bounces around like crazy and feels cheap, it definitely would have won this category. General use, carry, and EDC potential. Now, I know you can't read this, but this knife weighs in at 5.1 ounces. So overall, definitely a heavier knife for its size, but definitely not too bad. Also, the balance point on this knife is phenomenal. Again, the actual pocket clip makes a big difference as far as actually being able to carry it. The safety mechanism is a bit more refined and less likely to deploy into your pocket. And overall, it's just a pretty solid piece for EDC. It's also a much more EDC friendly size unless you're like me and like giant knives. Now again, you probably can't read this because of this damn glare, but the Halo 6 weighs in at 6.1 ounces. It's also a much larger knife. It's also a less EDC friendly option. Now, if you do want the option to have without the safety on, there is a Kydex sheath. It's not the most opportune carry. It's very awkward. It's not really ideal by any means. You do not have a pocket clip on this knife at all. If you want to carry it floating in your pocket, you can. I definitely have before. It does not feel all that good. It bounces around. If you happen to have any type of change or pens or lights or anything else in that same pocket, you're going to scratch the hell out of your knife or those objects. So as far as EDC wise, it's not really the best piece at all. As far as the overall size, I actually enjoy the size quite a bit because I do like bigger knives. But again, for the general EDC crowd, this is just not going to be it. So once again, the Heretic Knives Hydra edges out the competition again. It's a much more EDC friendly piece. It's also just a better overall design as far as general use and carry. I really feel like the Microtech, even though it is a fantastic knife, is almost kind of like a tactical art house piece. And it really screams that in the actual pocket as well as during general use. And this is just a better kind of overall footprint as well as style for general carry and basic use. Now, the final category is very much biased, right? And it just has to do with which one I like more. And the one I like more, honestly, is the Microtech Knives Halo 6. I love this knife. There are so many different things about it that don't quite sit perfectly with me, but none of them really detract from the fact that I absolutely adore this knife. The action, the overall fit and finish, the styles, everything holds this knife special place into my heart. Again, I wish it had a pocket clip. I wish it carried a little bit better in hand. I wish some of the little action pieces were better. I wish it didn't have this obnoxious ass warble, but it does. And despite all of that, I still love this knife. I still recommend this knife. But with all that being said, the numbers don't lie, and the Hydra gets a respectable golf clap. It definitely won this battle. Again, this is a single action showdown. This is a father and son showdown. This is a very similar company, but doing things just a little bit differently. And the Heretic Knives Hydra definitely won. It won fair and square. It edged out in almost every single category. Again, it's a great knife. I highly recommend it. If you enjoyed this video, I'll maybe do some more. I'm honestly not too sure about it, to be honest with you, but I had fun doing this. So as always, folks, you know what time it is, folks. I love you all from the bottom of my little ginger heart, my soul. I'm not going to say hold this time. If you watched the Brian Ty video, you heard me misspoke like an idiot. I'm going to mind my P's and Q's this time. I love you all from the bottom of my heart. And if you stuck around to the video and you want to try a single action OTF, I'm going to go ahead and be giving this very shitty Schrade away. It is not a good knife, folks. It is not an okay knife. It is kind of a shit show. But it's fun, and if for whatever reason you want it, go ahead and comment below, and just, I don't know, guess number between 1 and 20. Whoever is closest to it gets it. I love you all. Take care, and bye.